Hey, it's Mike. Thanks for tuning back in. Going to try something new today, and I'm excited about it. First of all, trying something new. It's a new microphone. It is wired, so I'm hoping that it's better. We'll see. I've been struggling with the audio here. The other new thing I'm going to try is a reader, a longtime viewer, who goes by Checkmugged in the comments here. His name is Jacob. It has emailed me a pretty lengthy Attic Find Friday story. So I'm going to read it. I'm just going to read it, and I'm going to put the photos, because he sent me a lot of photos. So most of the photos are from him. They're actually legitimate photos from the story. And then there's some other ones like of Pete Rose that I'm just going to put in here just to keep the story flowing visually. But yeah, really cool story. This is kind of what the hobby is about and the types of things. This is not insanely valuable cards. Probably a bunch of you are turning this off now. This is nostalgia value and the story behind your cards and childhood, and it's just such a great story, and I wanted to read it, so I'm going to read it, put some photos over it. Hope you enjoy. Let me know in comments, and here we go. I was born in 1975 in small town Ohio, and like most kids then, got into cards in the mid to late 80s into the earliest of the 90s. The junk wax kids. Being in central Ohio, and Pete Rose being Pete Rose, and the Reds still having the aura of the big red machine, I was naturally a huge Reds fan. After Pete, Eric Davis was my guy. To this day, I'm a Pete Rose super collector. I don't remember how I got into cards, only that I did, and all the way. There are pictures of me in my dad's living room surrounded by cards on all sides. There's a picture where I had left the cards out, and my cat played Animal Tsunami and scattered them everywhere. I had a card shop around the corner from my dad's house and flea markets on the weekends. I lived with my mom most of the time out in the country and had very few neighbors growing up. One of my neighbors, Mrs. Beatty, would babysit me when I was young. I used to give her kisses when I left, and I actually thought this was her payment for babysitting me. I was obviously very fond of Mrs. Beatty, but one year, unfortunately, she died. In her will, she had left me $1,500, which not only was an enormous sum to a kid my age, but a lot more money back in the late 80s, early 90s. Somehow I was allowed access to that money, and the opportunity came up for me to buy a lot of cards from my Uncle Gary for that amount. What I remember of this lot is that there were a few really old cards, to me, 1950s and 60s, that were in pretty bad shape. I remember a 1959 Topps Ernie Banks in decent shape. Grading not being a thing yet, you didn't heavily scrutinize a card unless it was obviously beat up somehow. I really loved that Banks card. A ton of name star cards that you'd expect, like Rose, Ripken Jr., Boggs, Mattingly, Canseco, McGuire, etc. I bought the lot. Like most people, my obsession with cards and even baseball waned for other interests over the years. However, I would check into the hobby every few years. I'd go to the local card shop, pick up a Beckett, chat up whoever was working, and try to keep up with the hobby, at least on the most basic level. After college, I moved to Columbus around 2001. I stayed in Columbus for about 15 years until I moved to Las Vegas. When I moved to Vegas, however, I kept my place in Columbus. It just seemed easier than moving or getting storage, as I planned on returning to Ohio from time to time since my entire family and most of my friends were still Ohio-based. When you're from small-town Ohio, you almost never leave small-town Ohio. Over the years, I'd visit Ohio less often and less often for a variety of obvious reasons. Currently, I'm coming back only about once a year for about 2 weeks for Christmas. So instead of continuing to waste money, I rent the place in Ohio. I decided maybe I should try to clean it out and get out of there and stay with friends or get an Airbnb when I come back. I started what would undoubtedly be the long, burning, arduous process today, packing up bag after bag of trash, mostly in the form of clothes, along with trying to match various electronics to their cord counterpart. Come to the top right-hand corner of my bedroom closet behind the backgammon set, the table tennis paddle, the artwork an ex made for me, a couple pairs of winter gloves I should never need again, and a chess set. I find 2 shoe boxes. At this point, I figure they're actually old shoes, as I've already tossed out at least a handful of pairs of shoes. I grab them, toss them on the desk, open the lids, and as you already guessed, they're cards. The box on the left is half and a half loose cards, not even in penny sleeves. Some cards in those plastic snap containers and some in top loaders. I go through this box first, and there's actually a Ken Griffey Jr. autographed ball in there I vaguely remember. There are, no surprise, an ample amount of Pete Rose and Eric Davis cards. There are approximately 20 1985 Topps Eric Davis rookies, a couple 1975 Topps Rose cards, and a few in the later 70s of Rose. I find a Jerry West Tall card, a second-year Carew that's in poor shape, a 1955 Bowman Mays that is from the run-over by a truck division. This is where I think it's important to point out how exciting it is to find a 1955 Mays randomly going through a box you forgot existed. Generally speaking, I'm a higher grade snob, and I'd never buy something that looked like some of these cards did. Still, you get jazzed up sifting through cards not knowing what's next, and bam, Willie bleepin' Mays, or boom, Elgin Baylor, regardless of the shape they're in. Now before I proceed to box number 2, I should note a couple of things. Another card that was in the original purchase from my uncle was a 1989 Bowman Griffey Sr. and Jr. card. What's the big deal, right? Well, it was signed by both of them. I had actually looked for this card over the years, but never had been able to find it. I had assumed that someone probably stole it at some point, or it was otherwise lost. I couldn't figure out how because I always took care to keep my cards, and I didn't move often, but I could never find it. Box number 2 is all top loaders and what appears to be a handful of graded cards. While I got back into the hobby during COVID and have remained in it strong since, being an adult and having money makes card collecting much more enjoyable. Before then, I had never, to my knowledge, purchased a graded card. Giddy is not a word used often, certainly not for adults, but I can think of no better word for what I was as I jumped into this box. I had 3 rows of maybe 100 cards each to go through. Row number 1, Ken Griffey Jr., Canseco, Randy Johnson rookies, Barry Larkin rookies, McGuire 1987 Topps rookies, Craig Biggio rookies, John Smoltz rookies, along with a smattering of random Ripken, Clemens, Mattingly, Boggs. Nothing over the top amazing, but again, a solid find, especially when all these cards were at least in top loaders. Row number 2, even more Griffies. I've always been a Griffey fan. Lots of those minor league cards, Bonds, Topps rookies, couple Canseco rookies, and a bit older cards of the same guys like Ripken. Now, pay attention. Also, in this row, we find Wade Boggs rookies, cards from the mid-70s from Steve Carlton, Nolan Ryan, Dale Murphy rookie, a 1960 Topps Hank Aaron, a 1960 Mays All-Star, Brooks Robinson, Eddie Matthews, Yaz, Reggie Jackson, Mike Schmidt, a Paul Molitor rookie, all solid 1970s stuff. And there's the 59 Topps Ernie Banks, exactly how I remembered it. It's in good shape, though centering is off left to right. 2 Joe Montana rookies, 1 Ricky Henderson rookie, not worth grading, 4 Cal Ripken Jr. rookies, 2 Ozzie Smith rookies, just shy of 10 Jordan cards worth looking into. No rookies or star cards, but still, potential cards like 2 Kenners from starting lineup. Lastly, a 1989 Fleer, Billy Ripken, F-face error. You can imagine if that was row 2, how hopeful I was going into row 3. Row 3, 4 1989 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. rookies. 60, yes, 60 Ken Griffey Jr. rookies, Topps, Fleer, Donruss, more Donruss than the others. And finally, the 6 slabbed cards, which were a letdown at this point, but really shouldn't have been. They were all Griffey Jr. rookies, graded 9s by PSA or Beckett. There are some I didn't mention, of course, because I've only gone through them once, and have to do some more research, especially on the football and basketball cards. I was super stoked that Santa realized how good I was this year and returned a couple boxes I had all but lost hope for to me. To further impress on people how exciting this was, after the discovery and telling a few friends I know who actually care about cards, I went to email you. You may think, so what? Well, I wrote this email from my phone. If it was a computer, I'd have been done an hour ago, but I couldn't wait to share the story until I got back to Vegas in 8 days, so I carpal tunneled up. It's an amazing story from Jacob. I love stories, as you know, and I love childhood, I love nostalgia, and this hit all the right notes, and I appreciate Jacob for sending it to me and trusting me to share it here, and also sending me all the photos with details and just great stuff. So thank you, Jacob. One final note. There's a lot of great photos here that Jacob included. He also included a bunch of notes about these photos that gave them some background that I'm not including here, but I am going to paste them verbatim, virtually, in my newsletter on Monday. So make sure you subscribe, junkwaxhero.com. He's funny, and he jokes about like the New Kids on the Block t-shirt that he's wearing and stuff like that from some of the photos. Yeah, I think it's definitely worth a read. I'll include those in my Monday newsletter. I hope you enjoyed. I anticipate doing another video tomorrow, maybe, but probably more likely my next one will be clearing the bases on Sunday. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I will see you soon.